Hello everybody. So we'll continue here on the chapter about mortality. Now we're going to cover this last topic here about the coronavirus pandemic that we experience at this moment in the world. So I will just show you some websites that can give you some idea of major levels of this pandemic and the distribution across the world. So for this, let's just go to slide 136. And here I just list some few websites in which you can get some data about the coronavirus, the COVID-19 global cases. So the Johns Hopkins University has been collecting data and make it available in this website here that even has a map that shows the distribution across the world. This Worldometer website lists the number of cases and tests per country and also some race that I will show you. This COVID community vulnerability map shows the US map and by different counties and which areas are more vulnerable or more susceptible to be infected and have issues related to the pandemic. And this other article here from the New York Times pretty much shows the coronavirus deaths by US states and country over time. It's pretty much a daily tracking of that data. So I will show you each one of these websites. But before that, I'm just going to go over a little bit here in some other discussions about this topic. So there are some articles that are being, some discussions related to the coronavirus pandemic and how that is associated to demography. So this article here at the New Yorker is an interview with a demographer saying how this coronavirus pandemic is related to the field of demography. This other article kind of showing why the coronavirus pandemic is killing so many more people in Italy compared to South Korea, for example. And the main argument here is that Italy has an older age structure comparing to South Korea. So people in Italy are more susceptible to die due to the coronavirus instead of a younger population. And here, demographic science aids in understanding the spread and fatality rates of COVID-19. And another interesting article by Dudley Poston, who recently retired from Texas A&M University, talking about students could be undercounted in the census as coronavirus closes colleges. And here's why that matters. And his main argument is that those areas that have a high proportion of college students, which is the case of Brazos County, for example, where Texas A&M is located, if students are not here at the moment that they are answering the 2020 demographic census, then they will be undercounted, and then these areas will receive less resources from the federal government in the future, which are based on the size of the population. And also, some articles to show how the coronavirus is associated with sex. So men are more likely to die than women to coronavirus. And here are some articles talking about going deaf about this issue. And then finally, some discussions about coronavirus and politics. This economist Branko Milanovic kind of saying that we have a risk of social collapse due to the pandemic, and some other articles showing how the outbreak in the US is going so high levels exactly because of the lack of appropriate measures by the government. And the same thing is happening in other countries, such as in Egypt and in Turkey. And in the other side, South Korea had a really good and fast response to the pandemic. So they flattened the curve. So the number of people dying to the coronavirus started to be much more constant or even decline on a daily basis much faster than the US is experiencing and other countries are experiencing. And these were the references, the overall references that were used for this lecture on mortality. So I will just show you guys now really quick these 4 websites here with information about the coronavirus pandemic. Let me just go to the websites. So this website here, organized by the Johns Hopkins University in Medicine. So pretty much like showing the total of confirmed cases in the world and broken down by country. And then we also have some bubble maps showing how the incidence is much higher right now here in the US and Europe. Oh yeah, that's an important thing to say. Today is April 10th, 2020. This pandemic is moving so fast, that's good to mention the date. So April 10th, 2020 right now. That's the total number of deaths and total number of people who recovered from the infection. This other website, Worldometer, also gives some estimation about the number of cases, deaths, and recovered. And here, this is an interesting data that I was mentioned to you. We have information by country. We have also the total for the world, but by country, the total number of cases, new cases, total deaths, new deaths, total recovered, active cases, serious critical cases, number of cases per 1 million population, number of deaths per 1 million population. So this is the mortality rate for related to the coronavirus, total number of tests, and tests per 1 million population. So this is rate of tests and mortality rate. So I will just select here the countries with at least 10,000 cases, and I will copy this information to an Excel spreadsheet. It should show you some things. I'm just copying this here, going to Excel, and then pasting this information. Let me just format this a little. This is something that you can do at home, and as these cases continue to be updated. And so here we have all this information. Let me just organize this here a little. So here you have the total number of deaths. Let me just freeze the panes here. And the US now has more cases than any other country. So this is ordered by total number of cases. And in terms of total number of deaths, Italy has more deaths at this point, and the US second, and Spain third. But if we look at the mortality rate, which is deaths divided by the size of population, that's this column here. And we see that Spain has 342 deaths per 1 million people, Italy 312 per 1 million people, and the US 55 per 1 million people. So Spain has less deaths than Italy, but because Spain has a smaller population than Italy, the rates here are higher. And what's interesting to track is the mortality rate in the US. It was only around 30 deaths per 1 million population a couple of days ago, and it has been increasing in these last days. Another rate that's important to notice here is the tests per 1 million population, and you see that the number of tests per 1 million population, the overall number of tests in the US is high if you compare to other countries, 2.5 million, but if you consider the size of the population, it's still small compared, for example, to Italy and compared to Germany and Switzerland, for example. And another rate that we can do is the fatality rate. And the fatality rate is pretty much the number of deaths divided by the number of cases. So we can just do here the number of deaths divided by the number of total cases. And then if we want to see this in a better way, we just multiply it by 100 to get in percentage terms, and just put 2 decimal cases here, and just copy this for the other countries. So we see that the fertility rate in the US, so number of deaths, oh sorry, I calculated wrong. Here I have to divide number of deaths, which is here, divided by the number of cases, which is here, and then multiply it by 100. Yeah, so now it's correct. Now it makes more sense. So here, 3% of those people that were tested with coronavirus in the US, they died. So that's pretty much that. 3.72% of those people that were tested and were positive for coronavirus, they died. So it's pretty much this fatality rate here. So the death rate is death divided by the population. And the column for population is not shown here in this table from this website. And fertility rate is number of deaths divided by the total number of cases. And I multiply by 100 to have it in percentage terms. In Spain, it's around 10% of those who are tested positive for coronavirus, they die, and 12% in Italy. And you see, for example, in South Korea, only 2%. And the discussion of one of the papers that I mentioned to you in the lecture is that these fatality rates here in South Korea are lower, for example, than in Italy, because the Italian population, it's an older population. You have a higher percentage of the population at older ages, which are more susceptible to die if they have the disease. But the issue about this rate for tests and the rate for mortality is that they actually depend on tests, because the test here, they enter in the numerator of this formula. And people just know if they have coronavirus if they were tested. So that's an issue of these two rates. The death rate, of course, I mean, someone dies and then they have to be tested if it was because of coronavirus, but it's a more, gives a better understanding of how severe is the pandemic in each one of these countries. And but it's interesting to look at all these different sorts of variables here, because they give us a better understanding of what's going on in all these countries. The third website that I wanted to show was this one here, and the fourth one, this one. So just go back to the internet, and here, this is the COVID community vulnerability map. And this is pretty much a public available interactive map that identifies pockets of individuals and communities across the US at risk of experiencing severe outcomes ranging from hospitalization to mortality as a result of contracting a respiratory infection like COVID. So this just to show that specific areas, they have higher vulnerability to deal with this pandemic, so they will have higher risks of severe outcomes. And then this website from the New York Times shows a daily track of the total coronavirus deaths for places with at least 25 deaths. And you say that the curve of the US is really steep, even comparing to Italy, which is a major place with like a lot of deaths. So that's something that still we have to have a lot of attention to it and keep tracking these numbers and implementing policies trying to stop the pandemic. So that's what I had to talk about this issue, and you can just keep exploring this data. Like I said, the Wordometer website, you can download it really easy, like I did here for Excel, and you can calculate the fatality rate by yourself by dividing the total number of deaths by the number of cases, multiplied by 100, you have percentage terms, and then gives you even more information to understand the pandemic. So thank you very much for your attention.